Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. Welcome to Sunday morning worship. My name is Jen Youngsun Ryu, and I have the privilege of serving this congregation, this beautiful congregation, as its minister. The autumn season is upon us. Happy Mabon, everyone. And for those who practice the Jewish traditions, Happy New Year, as Rosh Hashanah begins this evening. If today is your first time with us, we would love to get to know you. And so I want to let you know that right after services, we have a welcome reception room, which is our south foyer. It's out that door, and it's that beautiful sunlit space. And if you're online, welcome to you as well. Our visitor form is being dropped in the chat right now, and so you can fill that out to receive copies of our newsletter and to find out what is happening. And so much is happening around here. As you enter the sanctuary today, and at any point during the service, I hope you'll feel comfortable just coming up to the candles of joy and sorrow. We have also stones that you can place in water, and we have a book that you can write your joys and sorrows, your prayers, your concerns into. Those who are joining from home can write prayers of joys and sorrows in the Zoom chat, which will be open until the sermon starts. And then during the week, any one of you can go to our website. We have what's called a pastoral care portal, and in there you can find out how you can connect with our ministers if you need some extra support. We are honored to have a special guest preacher today with us. Annie Scott is our congregational life field staff person from the UUA's Pacific Western region, and she lives in Astoria currently. And our church, is just one of 35 congregations in this huge region that she serves. Annie has been a credentialed religious educator with 30 years of experience serving 5 congregations all over the United States. And she has served as the president of the Liberal Religious Educators Association, LREDA. Annie believes that faith formation is a lifelong journey, and every part of congregational life, from finance to building and grounds, from worship to religious education, those are all places where we have the opportunity to deepen our faith. Annie also has a very special connection to Eugene, and so we're happy that she could visit us here in person today. Thank you for being with us. So, if you had a chance to take a look at the church calendar for today, you know that there are a dozen things happening right after church today. One of them is going to start right around 11 o'clock, right here and on Zoom. It is a listening circle to talk about the possibility of changing our masking requirement. Right now, we require everyone to be masked. And if you want to gather to express your opinion and your thoughts about this, we'll be right here. We're going to be practicing something called consent decision making, and there will be childcare provided for that. Also, today is the last formal day to sign up for small group connection circles. And Dick, if you have not seen Dick and his fabulous hat, there he is. And he'll be glad to answer any questions and help you to sign up for small group connection circles. It's really the best way to get to know each other and to deepen your spiritual life. And now, let mind and heart prepare a place for love. We gather in worship to find meaning and to live more deeply. We gather in worship because it creates connections within and among and beyond us, calling us to our better selves, calling us to live with wisdom and compassion So whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your image of the holy, we're glad you're with us. You belong here. This morning, Leo will come up and help light the chalice. We light this chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with the words of Starhawk. We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned that we can only catch a glimpse of from time to time. Community. A circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. A circle of healing, a circle of friends, some place where we can be free. And now, let's say together the words of our mission, which affirm our purpose. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world.
It's lovely to be here, and thank you for that generous introduction. This is my first time in a church in 2.5 years. And it's wonderful to be here, just wonderful. The times we've been in together, apart, alone, isolated, have left us all with a wide range of emotions. We are in recovery, and the world continues to be a hard place to be. Anxiety, fear, grief, longing, it's all here with us. It's in us. We gather from near and far, online and here in person. Will you join me here and feel this moment? Being in your body. It's always good to be talked to, isn't it? And will you just outreach your arms, trying not to whack the person around you, and just feel the embrace. You might turn your hands this way and feel the presence. Online, feel the love and togetherness that we are experiencing, that we extend to you. So gather it to yourself, feel it. Be present in this precious, precious moment. Come, let us worship together. Come on down. This warms my heart. Hi. Thank you for being of service, gathering. So, I know that you all experience all sorts of emotions in your lives. And, feelings are like a wave. They come on, and then they crest, and then they go down. And our adults, your adults, too have feelings. And in these times, they're often anxious and afraid. And so I wanted to give all of you a suggestion, an idea for what you might do when you're feeling anxious or afraid or upset, angry, particularly when you're at school. And there you are, you're just stuck there, and you can't, say, I'm sorry, I'm having feelings, I'm going to go home now. Or at home, when your parents are particularly anxious or angry or just grouchy. So, my offering is that you might go in the bathroom stall at school. And if you place your arms out in front of you, like you're holding something round. And then as you breathe in, the balloon, imagine this is a balloon. You breathe and it expands, and then you breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And each time you breathe in, you hold that balloon for about 4 seconds. So do that with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let it out. And then you hold that. And then you breathe in again. And your brain gets more oxygen. You get less anxious and more able to move through the day calmly. So thank you for joining me.
Today's reading is adapted from the words of George Odell. We need one another. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted, when we are in trouble and are afraid, when we despair in temptation and need to be recalled to our best selves. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone. We need one another in the hour of our successes, when we look for someone to share our triumphs, and in the hour of our defeat, when with encouragement we might endure again. We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey. All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
I have to wait till my glasses are unfogged. I have a deep sense of belonging in this southern part of the Willamette Valley, as Reverend Jen referenced to. My grandparents lived here for 50 years near the corner of 10th and Mill. So I spent a fair amount of time in my childhood. My parents, my grandparents, 3 out of my 4 children attended University of Oregon, and many of my friends did back in the early 70s. And I am a descendant of white Lane County settlers in the 1850s. Charlotte and Binan-Pengra came across the Oregon Trail in 1853, and Francis and Malin Harlow came across the trail in 1850. Harlow Road and Harlow House were named after my great-great-grandparents. I grew up with a sense of belonging here. My people belong here. I visit old cemeteries up on the hill. As I grew up, I learned a more complex history of the state I love, the people I love, and I've had to come to terms, or I am coming to terms, with a more complex sense of belonging to this place and to my people. I understand that my family members' rights were granted them, and it meant they were stealing land from indigenous people who had lived and belonged to this area for thousands and thousands of years. It's a truer sense of belonging that I continue to work on. I am here because they survived. I also feel accountable for my ancestors' wrongs. I'm working on making that part of my belonging too. In her book, Braving the Wilderness, Brené Brown wrote, "Belonging is being part of something bigger than yourself. But it's also the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else." That first part, that belonging to something bigger than yourself, I wonder what comes to mind for each of you when you hear that. This faith, this congregation, the earth and all its creatures, God, perhaps a movement. Brown also writes that belonging is the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else. That kind of belonging to yourself, she writes, is not something we achieve or accomplish. It's something we carry in our heart. So it's not about degrees or high-paying jobs or lovely homes. It's not about what we do for others, the congregation, or your partner. It's a belonging to yourself that you carry in your heart. What does that feel like? Is it fleeting? I started wondering if there are times when I feel that, a true sense of belonging to myself. I recalled a time last week when I sat beside and set aside my own anxiety and my fear of imperfection and listened to another person's anxiety and fear. I felt I belonged to myself in that presence. I sat with a friend in a time of great loss and fear, and I felt I belonged to myself. I remembered a time I interrupted a person in power who was being dismissive of a less powerful person, and I felt I belonged to myself. There's a children's book that my 5-year-old granddaughter Emerson and I love called Annie's Plaid Shirt. You can tell why I was immediately attracted to it. Well, Annie had a plaid shirt that she loved. It's the only thing she wanted to wear. Well, Annie's uncle was getting married, and her mom wanted her to wear a dress. Ugh! Why can't I wear my plaid shirt, said Annie. Because girls wear dresses, said her mom. Annie's mom insisted they go shopping for a new dress. Annie went along, but didn't like it. Her mom found one that she approved of and bought it, even with Annie's protests. The morning of the wedding, Mom was sitting in the kitchen, dressed and ready to go, and as she waited for Annie and her brother to come down, she wished she hadn't insisted on Annie wearing the dress, but it felt too late now. So she called to her kids. Annie's brother had an idea. He had 2 white suits, which he loved. When Annie and her brother appeared in the kitchen door ready to go, Annie was wearing one of those white suits, and of course, her plaid shirt. She was beaming. Her mom said, "You look wonderful, and I apologize." And they hugged, and off they went to the wedding. Now, in that moment in the kitchen, when they all came together, I think that each might have had that sense of belonging to themselves. The brother's heart is full of seeing who his sister really is and standing up for her. Annie, who stood up for herself and with help found a way to be true to herself and felt that sense of belonging to herself. And the mom who realized she'd been wrong, admitted it, apologized, and encouraged Annie to be her best self. She too, I think, had a sense of belonging to herself. Earlier in this service, we said all together your mission statement. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world. I'm thinking about Brown's notion of belonging to ourselves and your line, empowered by love. They feel akin to me. In these times when we are filled with anxiety, fear, sadness, and grief, I invite you to think of a time when you acted out of a sense of belonging, out of a sense of being empowered by love. empowered by love. I wonder what might come up for you, either a time when you felt empowered by love or like you belonged to yourself. I'm going to give you a moment. What might come up for you? A time you acted empowered by love, or you felt that sense of belonging to yourself. Now, I am a religious educator, so I would like to be bold and ask you to risk turning to someone near you and share whatever you're comfortable sharing about what came up for you. What came up for you? What came to mind when you think of empowered by love or belonging to yourself? Preferably talking to someone you don't live with, but if they're the only one nearby, go ahead. So I'd like you each to take just a minute and share. And if there's a silence, just hold that silence. I'll let you know when 2 minutes are up. Okay, your time is up. Calling you back now, please. Now, the next phrase in your mission statement, we transform ourselves and serve the world. That is faith development. That is faith formation. This transforming ourselves is where our faith is forged. My colleague Joy Berry, who is the acting director of the Foz Center at Meadville Lompard Divinity School, talks about the final stage of faith development, which is really all of adulthood, is a wrought faith, a faith that is worked and heated with like steel, formed and cooled down, and then worked some more. My colleague Tandy Rogers says if your covenant doesn't have tear stains on it and isn't dirty, then you're not working with it hard enough. Your commitment to transform yourselves is very inspiring to me. It says to me you commit every Sunday when you say it together. I hear it as continuing to explore and deepen your faith. When you're in a challenging or painful time, you reach out to others or read a poem that speaks to you. You go into the woods or go to the ocean, or you sing or listen to music. We sang For All That Is Our Lives. In it, we speak of gratitude, of building the common good, serving other people's needs and for rest and love, sorrows and failures, the fear we must endure, and we are grateful because we have committed to building a common good. Isn't that what your mission is all about? Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve the world. Several years ago now, religious educators, ministers, and RE volunteers began talking about a full week faith. We understood that faith formation doesn't just happen on Sunday mornings. We form our faith every day of our lives. We choose and affirm over and over what our lived values are. That's the wrought faith Joy Berry talks about. When we are faced with the challenges of our lives, what choices will we make? Do we belong to ourselves when we are disrespected by a coworker or a supervisor? According to activist, writer, and author Adrienne Marie Brown, community is a place to practice and participate in care, attention, knowing, being known, being protected, having room to make mistakes, and still belong. Not just to be allowed there, but to be valuable, to heal and recover. Community feels responsible for each other. She goes on, community is a choice. More precisely, community is an accumulation of choices made every day, a set of growing practices. I just love that phrase, a set of growing practices. We, Unitarian Universalists, are a covenantal faith. We make intentional what Adrienne Marie Brown calls a set of growing practices. If we're not there, we're not perfect, and we never will be, we are always practicing. We have made a commitment to our covenant, and we practice. We hold them up. We repeat them as you repeat your mission in your service. My sense of Unitarian Universalism is that congregations, boards, committees have gotten pretty good at naming our intentions in our covenant. I think we are now, as an association, working on two aspects of covenanting. Doing the next step of deepening our faithfulness. We are developing growing practices of having hard conversations with one another and holding ourselves and one another accountable for harm we do one another. It takes courage to be vulnerable and say, I was hurt by what you said. And it also takes courage to say, I'm sorry for what I did, and what can I do to make it right? In this unbelievable time we are in, when we are so worn out, anxious, fearful, traumatized, exhausted, and even crispy, as some people would say, we need to take on growing practices to make our covenants live. Practicing hard conversations and practicing what accountability with love looks like. The UUA Board of Trustees has an ongoing commission on appraisal that looks at our living faith tradition and takes an area of study, one at a time, and then makes recommendations to all of us. The last report came out in 2021 called Unlocking the Power of Covenant. It's a great guide for where we need to go and how we might go about that. In it, they write, covenants are the grounding practice of accountability to one another. One definition of covenant is the process of the members learning to live together in loving and supporting relationships, or right relations. A covenant recognizes that all parties share an interest in the preservation and health of all those who have subscribed to it. When we covenant, persons become vulnerable to each other in a caring community. With a covenant, all parties hold up their ends, regardless of whether another keeps theirs. A violation of a covenant by one party breaks the covenant, but does not destroy it. The remaining covenantal parties have a responsibility to continue to do what was agreed to and seek out a healing of the covenant. Our faith and our congregations have grown and developed steeped in our dominant white culture. Your congregation has demonstrated some commitments to addressing that culture by passing the 8th principle and by calling a minister of color. And now the work begins for real, as young folk would say. What are the growing practices that you and we need to develop to live the antidotes to white supremacy? Two of my particular favorites that I'm so aware of and that are alive and a force within me are perfectionism and a sense of urgency. In my spiritual life, I commit every day to challenging the perfectionism that causes me to feel not good enough, inadequate, and unworthy. I practice remembering that I and everyone I encounter is actually human, which is, its core means imperfect. And that sense of urgency is all about us. It's all about slowing down, pausing when I or we start to get defensive or activated. First, I have to notice when I or someone else is responding with defensiveness or increased anxiety, then inviting myself and those around me to pause, to breathe, to move our brains out of that anxiousness, that defensiveness, and come to a calm presence again. These days, I encourage boards in their covenants to commit to pausing when they feel themselves becoming defensive or agitated in their meetings, or when they feel what I call an itch inside them, that something is not right. If I can take a moment, often I realize that some communication I witnessed felt harmful or disrespectful to me. If I can have a moment to think and feel, I can come back and ask for what I need or what I'm seeing and witnessing. We are part of the larger culture that has been built on the supremacy of some people over others. You clearly have committed to this collective decision, the collective decision to fight and change and learn and embody new practices. I invite you to reflect on what growing practices would lift up the commitment you have made in your congregation. Your votes for the 8th principle and calling a minister of color. What areas do you need to take on as growing practices? As I was reflecting for this sermon, I got to wondering about my team of coworkers on the PWR, or Pacific Western Region staff team. There are 11 of us, and we meet online. I thought about what are our growing practices. We have committed to centering marginalized people and their needs. We have committed to being generous and with showing gratitude with one another. And we encourage one another to rest and take care of ourselves. Now, some of these have been named as commitments called by our faith, called by the administration of the UUA, and some came about through just simply serving together. At least once a year, we revisit our covenant. I'm wondering what you all might name as growing practices in your church. This church whose purpose is empowered by love, transforming ourselves and serving the world. What might your next growing practices be? Living into the commitments that you have made to move into an anti-racism community, individuals, and world. So I again invite you to partner up and take 3 minutes together to name some growing practices that you either have here at UUCE or that you think you should have or might have to stretch. This time that we are coming out of is an opportunity. Everything has been shaken. It's an opportunity to change and rethink how we are together. So I invite you to take 3 minutes and think together about what might your growing practices be here at your Eugene community. Again, could be someone you don't live with, or it could be. So I'll tell you in 3 minutes. Be conscious of sharing the time. So I was just confessing to Rev Jan that I don't come with a plan for what you're going to do with these growing practices. And kind of apologizing to her. And she said, well, you're planting seeds. So thank you for that. We need one another. And the world needs us. May you be grounded in moments of belonging to yourselves. And may you live your growing practices every day empowered by love. Amen. and may it be so. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. As we leave this time together in the sanctuary and online, may we pay attention to experiences of belonging to ourselves. And may those times feed the efforts you all have begun and bring healing and care to our broken and damaged world. Amen. May it be so, and go in peace.